Okay. So good day and welcome to this session. The previous session we had a module one. So today we're going to be looking at module two and three. So module two talks about leadership and governance for quality excellence, while module three talks about risk management system. So what we are doing is high level implementation, what's the effectiveness and what's the use of leadership and governance for quality excellence and risk management system on this session today. So my name is Dr. Aliu is going. So the purpose of the module two is to position quality as a leadership and a governance responsibility, and not just merely a quality departmental function. Now, the next thing, so we're going to look at core topics responsibility like board responsibility, executive leadership, governance framework, accountability metrics, and quality committee structure. So we are looking at these now as leadership and governance for quality excellence. So for compliance ownership to enterprise-wide quality leadership, then at the end of the day, you're going to build a governance chart for your organization. So what is the essence of this? These are high-level quality management system we are discussing and looking at it as the integral part of it. Now, at the end of the day, we should be able to explain the role of the board and senior leadership in quality oversight. Now, remember, if you went through the uh, notes or the video I sent to you, the assignment on organization and structure. So those is what we discuss at basic or QMS level. But the advanced level now, we're looking at it from the role of the board and senior leadership in quality oversight. Now, that's the reason why I sent us that video prior to this class, so that you can be able to understand those minimal things when it comes to organization and structure. Now, to design governance framework, connecting strategy, quality, risk, and work performance. Clarify accountability using explicit responsibility metrics. Then structure effective quality committee with clear authority and reporting lines. Then translate governance decision into what? Measurable quality action. Now the question is that why leadership determines quality performance? Now quality is a management discipline. So just as the way we talk about customers focus, customers responsibility is not a front desk responsibility. Customer focus is not people who attend to, it's not the responsibility of those who just attend to clients or patients at the front desk or who interface. So it is a management responsibility. Until the management is involved, until there is a management responsibility, customers' focus can never be met in an organization. Because everything the management does, everything the management put in place should be to meet the customer's need. So it is also for quality. So quality is not a QA team. It's not a quality assurance role or a departmental function. So at the basic quality management system, we look at it as a departmental function, as everybody's function. But here we're looking at it as a leadership function. So quality systems succeed when leadership provides direction. They provide resources, accountability, and a visible commitment. So yeah, the system will succeed when leadership provide direction, when they provide resources, when they provide accountability, how they provide what visible commitment. So leadership sets priorities, governance creates the decisions, the architecture, the operational team to execute and to what improve. So that's why we say if you have a weak governance, definitely you're going to slow the corrective actions, and also you're going to have a lot of recurring problems. So strong governance turns quality from just a periodic project into a management system. That's why they call it what? Quality management system. So for you to have a quality system, then you must have management discipline. And for you to have management discipline, then you have to have what? Leadership. I hope we are getting the story. So strong governance turns quality from just a periodic project into what? A management system. It takes strong governance, it takes leadership to be able to turn quality into a culture within an organization. And that's why we're looking at it from what? The perspective of what? Leadership and governance for quality what? Excellence. Now, what is the board responsibility for quality? What is the board responsibility for quality? I've had the opportunity to present uh, a quality process, a quality project. And at the end of the day, when the board is not seeing it the way it should see it, then there are a lot of disconnection, sorry, between what the project and the actualization, in other words, the implementation. So what's the board responsibility for quality? Is to approve the organization quality direction and strategic priorities. If the board does not see quality as a key KPI, definitely much cannot be done. So the board responsibility is to approve the organization quality direction and strategic priorities to ensure quality and patient safety receive appropriate oversight. Is to review performance trends, significance, incident, and major improvement priorities. Other functions of board responsibility for quality include to hold executive leadership accountability for agreed quality objectives. Now, let's say, for example, now quality objectives that be agreed for a particular department, a particular section, a particular part of whether the hospital or the clinics or the lab or etc. Now, it is the responsibility of the board to hold the executive leadership accountable. Remember that if you work in an organization, a board is higher than the management or the leadership of that business. So board is the overall, which could include executive and non-executive board members. So the board is responsible to ensure adequate resources and organization condition for safe and reliable work care. So in an organization, the board is usually like the highest decision making. Now, moving from the board, now let's look at the executive leadership in quality. Executive leadership now. When we're looking at executive leadership, we're looking at people like the CEO, the managing director, we're looking at the clinical leaders, the operational leaders, quality leaders, the finance, HRO, IT, all those executive leadership, the management team, they fall under what? Executive leadership in quality. Now we'll talk about the board, their responsibility. Now we're looking at what? The executive leadership. Now the CEO or the managing director establish an organization direction and accountability. Now the clinical leadership embeds quality and safety into clinical decision making. That's the clinical leadership. It could be maybe the medical director, could be the laboratory director, whatever it is, whatever his name may be called. Ensure that what they embed quality and safety into what clinical decision making. So every decision they want to implement, they must ensure that what there is quality and what there is safety. Now, the success, the outcome of patient treatment, the outcome of patient tests and everything, ensure that what they must embed. So all the things they need to put from the quality control to the quality assurance to the quality management system to ensure what there's quality, safety, and every decision to improve what the clinical outcome is under the responsibility of the clinical leadership. They have what's called the operational leadership. This aligns the process, resources, and service delivery with the quality objectives. Remember, you can have a quality outcome you can have a good result. Let's say, for example, let's use the hospital for example. If you work with the hospital and they are doing a surgery, you can have a good surgery and the patient is fine, but all the operational processes that lead to that surgery may even give the patient a very bad experience. Okay, let's say for example now a surgery is done and the surgery was okay. At the end of the day, the room at which the ward at which they kept the patient, now that ward has no, maybe that ward there is no good environment. There's the AC is leaking, the place is smelling, it's not well cleaned, and all those things. The beds are bad. At the end of the day, you have a good clinical outcome, but yet operational quality is missing. Now I have seen now though this is life scenario uh or between two hospitals. Now the first hospital, uh a very high profile patient went to a hospital and had a surgery. And after going to that surgery, the surgery was done well. Now, but where they kept the woman after the surgery was very poor. And the woman didn't like the comfort, everything, the ambience, and a whole lot of stuff like that. Now, the woman has been to another hospital before in a particular town. Now, but that hospital the woman went to, now, the surgery, the people who did the surgery was not, their expertise was not as good as the other hospital. So now, the third time this woman needed to go, she went to a place that she was treated well. I mean, treated well in terms of the operations, where they had a good bed, good stuff, good ambience, everything was looking good. At the end of the day, she went to that place, and her surgery didn't go actually well. So when they began to ask the woman and the person who brought the client, they're like, "Ah, why did you go to the place where this first surgery was done well?" The woman said she didn't like where she was kept. The ambience and everything, she didn't like it. And at the end of the day, you see what operational leadership can cause despite a good clinical outcome. Somebody may not want to go to a lab that maybe the result is accurate, and at the end of the day, if he feels uncomfortable with the place, when where the sample was collected, his waiting area, maybe someone is talking to him anyhow. At the end of the day, you see that operational leadership that is missing, that operational excellence that is missing, can actually hamper the quality of service delivery. So you see, both clinical leadership, operational leadership, all has to be in place for the TQMS and for the end user to be able to have a good experience. So we have the CEO, the managing director function, we have the clinical leadership, we have the operational leadership, we also have the quality leadership, provide technical coordination, assurance, and measurement and improvement work support. They will have other functions like the finance, HR, IT, and other functions enable quality through resources, competency systems, and data. So you see that this is the executive leadership in quality. So every aspect they must be quality. That's what we call total quality management system. The managing director must align, must give the organization direction and accountability. Clinical leadership must ensure that they embed quality and safety into clinical decisions making operationally, because if you don't get your operation right, definitely it can jeopardize every effort that is made to acquire the patient. Then in marketing, there's what we call cost of acquiring a client, or cost of acquiring a new client. And this thing can also help for repeat visits, for client retention, patient retention. So your finance, your HR, your IT, and other functions, maybe you have a career services and etc., to enable quality through process competency systems and what data. So now the quality governance framework, a practical cascade, the level one is the board, which have the oversight, strategic direction, and accountability. Level 2 is for the executive leadership that translates strategy into priorities, resources, and performance worth expectations. Then level 3 talks about quality governance committee. So you should have a quality governance committee that is responsible to review quality indicators, risk, incident audit, and improvement with action. Then the fourth level of this quality governance framework, which can be your department, your facility. Those ones, they will help to implement standard, monitor performance, and close gap. Then level 5 talks about frontline. Frontline staff deliver document reports and continuously improve. So this is a practical governance cascade for a quality governance framework. These are not the conventional things we hear around about QMS, but that's why we call it an advanced quality management system program. Next, we talk about accountability metrics. Who owns what? So strategic accountability is owned by what? Board and executive management. Process accountability should be owned by what? The department or the service owner. It could be the facility, could be maybe the service owner. Technical quality assurance should be responsible by the quality functions or the quality manager or quality committee. They are responsible for technical. Well, risk ownership, managers who control and affect the processes or expose. Those are the risk ownership. They don't have to take ownership. Action ownership, name individuals with deadlines and evidence of completion. The key principle is that every quality objective, risk, and corrective action needs a clear owner. Every quality objective. So in quality, in ISO, we talk about quality policy, quality objective, quality indicators. So quality policies tells us the organization strategy or direction, which are usually done by what? The executive leadership, approved with the approvals of the board. Now, quality objectives now here help us to create actionable and measurable objectives. Just like, for example, you are doing your project, you have aims and objectives. Yeah. So the objectives should be aligned with the what? With the aims. And then you know that the aim here is now like the policy. So your objectives should align with the policy. Then your quality indicators are set to see whether your objectives are met or not. So these are ISO and these are basic quality management systems. So that's the way it works. Quality policy, quality objective, and quality indicators. So key principle that every quality objective, every risk and corrective action need a clear owner. Who is the owner of it? Is it the lab manager? Is it the personnel? Is it the department? Is it the committee? Is it the support function? It has to have what? A clear owner. Are we communicating? Let's say, for example, now, if I say I want to improve the revenue of the organization or client retention, that objective over the next 6 months, I want to increase it by 50%. That objective should have someone who is owning it. That's what we're saying. Let's say, for example, a non-conformity was raised in a hospital or in a lab, and you're putting a corrective action. That non-conformity, that corrective action should have someone who owns it. Because if you don't have someone who owns it, definitely the corrective action will not be effective. Are we communicating? Please, if you can hear me loud and clear, please type on the comment section that you can hear me loud and clear. Please, can you hear me loud and clear? Please type on the comment section that you can hear me loud and clear. Okay. Okay, thank you. So the next is the quality committee structure. So define the committee mandate. When you are creating a quality committee structure, you define the committee mandate, the authority, the membership of that committee, and reporting relationship. Usually, quality committee structures use balanced membership across relevant clinical and non-clinical functions. Set a regular meeting calendar and standardize the agenda. You can review KPIs, incident, complaint, audit finding, risk, corrective action, improvement projects. They track decision through an action log with owners and due dates. They escalate unresolved or high risk issue to the executive leadership or the board. So these are functions of quality committee structure, quality committee oversight in a particular organization. Now, there are some organizations that they may not have it as a committee, but they can choose to have it as a department with key quality champions in each location. I've seen a place whereby every department has a quality assurance manager for each department. So over 15 different departments, every department has a quality assurance manager. So those quality assurance manager now forms the quality committee structure for the organization. So what makes a quality committee effective? Decision-oriented, not simply a reporting meeting. Evidence-based, use reliable data and documented findings. That's what makes them accountability-driven. So every action has an owner and has a deadline. They are risk-focused. They prioritize issue by potential impact. So what they focus more is the one that has a high risk. When it comes to risk assessment, I hope you know what's called risk matrix. A risk matrix is the elementary way of handling risk, whereby you assess the risk, you know if it's high risk and low risk. And how do you know if something is high risk and low risk? You check, you can use the risk matrix, the severity and the frequency of it defines what. So if something happen now, if the severity is going to be high, it's a high risk. So if you look at that you should know that risk matrix. If you don't know it, read it this night. What is risk matrix? So it's a chart used to measure the severity of risk, and risk can be classified as low risk, medium risk, or high risk. So what makes a quality committee effective? Decision oriented, not simply by a reporting, not just by reporting, but ability to make decisions. Evidence based, accountability driven, risk focused. Prioritize issues by potential impact. They help to close loops, verify whether action actually produced what improvement or not. They're executive connected. Critical issues are escalated promptly. And that's one of the reasons why a quality committee should have a direct access to what the top management. Just like when you have an auditor, internal auditor in a firm, in a firm, in any firm, that auditor should report to the board or to the highest person in that company, so that if there are issues, people with the middle level does not hinder those reports and does not sit on it. So they should have an executive connection. They should be connected to the executive, so that any of their findings, any of their reports, any critical issue can be escalated promptly to the executive management or to the board. We are talking about governance now. We're talking about structure. We're talking about what makes quality work, what makes quality effective. So all the do's and don'ts of quality, that all those things are managed in basic quality management system and ISO different quality management system. We're talking about governance, leadership, and governance. So let's say, for example, now you have a recurring problem. A hospital repeatedly receives complaints about long waiting time. The quality team reports the issue monthly, but the trend remains unchanged. Operation blames staffing. Clinicians blame registration, and registration blames IT. Discussion: what governance failure is occurring? I take that again. A case study. There is a recurring problem. A hospital repeatedly receives complaints about long waiting time. The quality team reports the issue monthly, but the trend remains unchanged. The operation blames staffing. Clinician blame registration. Registration blames IT. Discussion: what governance failure is occurring? Now, who owns the outcome? What should the quality committee decide? And what should reach the executive team? Please take this case study, and I want to have your opinion in a written form in this case study. Please look at it. I will also share it with us, but please take this case study. A hospital repeatedly received a complaint about a long waiting time. The quality team reports the issue monthly, that it has already been showing their report, but the trend remains unchanged. So when asked, the operations are blaming staffing. Oh, they are understaffed. The clinicians now are blaming registration. Registration now is blaming IT people. So the discussion is that what governance failure is what occurring. So just like an input to you when you're answering this, who owns the outcome? What should the quality committee decide? And what should reach the executive team? Okay, please. Now, let's look at some key takeaway. Quality governance begins with what leadership commitment. Accountability must be explicit and not assumed. Committee should drive decisions and action, not only presentation. Now, in this part of the country where we are, you see, we do a lot of presentation, a lot of talk, and then there is very low take homes, very low action points. We come back again in the same meeting, and the things that were discussed in the previous meeting, there is no action that is being done. We keep going in that circle. But this that thing quality goes. Now, in basic quality management system, like ISO 151 right now, we talk about things like called the management review meeting. Management review meetings are meetings that has input and output and action points and all those things where it's supposed to be held at least once in a year. Now, but when no one have a normal departmental meeting, management meeting, so we are saying that committee should drive decisions and actions, not only just presenting. Oh, we are presenting. Okay, after you are presenting, I'm gone. What is being done? What are you doing about it? So quality, risk, and performance should be connected at governance what level. Action. You can convert this principle into your organization governance chart. This principle that is shared with us today. Quality governance begins with leadership, commitment. Accountability must be explicit, not assumed. Committee should drive decision and action, not only what presentations. Now, the next one is module 3. We talk about learning outcomes on what risk management. So at the end of the day, you should understand the role of enterprise risk management. Please write that down. What is enterprise risk management? I want you to read and study that. What is enterprise risk management within a healthcare QMS? But you have in every aspect, even in banking, we have what's called enterprise risk management. So that's enterprise. What's the risk management in it? So differentiate between clinical and operational risk while recognizing their interdependency. There's clinical risk, operational risk. Identify hazard, assess risk, and prioritize control. They build an actionable risk register. They use incident reporting and corrective action to create an organization worth learning. So in basic quality management system and ISO 151, for example, we just talk about corrective actions. They should be corrective. So now in advanced QMS, you should be looking at those corrective actions that has done, those incident report that has been done. You need to look at trends and use it to build an organization learning. So if, for example, I have 20 corrective actions that was done in 6 months, I can find a trend from that. I can look at where we need to put priorities, because in other words, we call it in ISO. We look at that from the basis of management review. All the corrective action, is there a trend that was done? What corrective action was done? How effective was that? So in advanced quality management, in leadership and governance, risk management, we'll go further behind, not just doing the corrective action. Yeah, the corrective action has solved the problem, if it's effective. But now we're looking at getting like trend analysis and helping the organization to make an informed decision We'll call it organizational learning points. So, what is risk management? So, risk management is a structured process for understanding uncertainty that can affect the objective, the patient, the staff, the operation, or the organization. Any uncertainty that can affect our objective, can affect our patient, can affect our staff, can affect our operation, can affect the organization, can affect safety, can affect the environment, is known as what? Risk. And the ability to manage that is what we call risk management. So risk management is separate things. There are a lot of organizations now that are implementing risk management. They are risk management experts. So it's people also specialize in risk management too, also as part of quality management system. So that's why I say quality management system is very broad and very big and very uh, enterprising. That's why we have people that do biosafety and biosecurity. They are part of our quality management system. So that's also risk. So risk management is also a big thing. Just like you in every organization now, there's what we call ESG. So they are also big things. So effective risk management is proactive, pro active. So it is not a corrective action, it's proactive. So before it happens, you have to identify it and put measure to be able to what. Let's say, for example, that you are having stock out and you have solved that. Let's say, for example, now, okay, let me use the simplest thing. You see a cable that is not trunked in your office, a cable that is not trunked, a loose cable. There's risk. True or false? True. Uh, of recent, last year, built an additional structure of the hospital. And so this gentleman was was walking and carrying a very long iron. In process of carrying it, he didn't even touch the high cable. The high cable attracted and dragged him and hit him on the floor. And that was the end of the man. So that so there was a risk. But because that risk was not identified, it has led to what? An incident. It has led to an occurrence. So effective risk management is being proactive, evidence-based, and integrated into the management decision. So if there was a risk assessment that was done before that project was done, you would have known that this thing has a potential of what? Or if the project manager has risk management experience or a risk manager there, that worker will not carry that thing to that level that the high tension can attack. He didn't touch the high tension, but because of the high tension cable, it grabbed the what he was carrying, grabbed him and landed him on the floor, and that was the end of the man. So quality governance provide oversight. Operational owners manage risk in their process. So while the quality governance is providing oversight, the operational owner should be able to manage the risk in their work processes. To every processes, there is risk. Even to the SOP you are trying to implement, there is risk. That's why when you are writing SOP, before you implement SOP, you look at the risk. What is the risk of implementing this SOP? Operational owner should manage what risk in their processes. So that's what we call enterprise risk management in healthcare. Now, strategic risk, clinical risk, operational risk, compliance risk, reputation risk. These are the major risks in healthcare. We want to talk about strategic risk. Now, we're talking about growth, reputation, regulatory expectation, partnership, and financial worth, sustainability. That is what strategic risk. When we are looking at clinical risk, we're looking at diagnosis, treatment, medication, infection prevention, patient deterioration, continuity of care. All these things falls under what? Clinical risk.
Then when we look at operational risk, we're looking at what staffing, equipment, supplies, facility, IT, laboratory operation, other service continuity, nursing stations, other aspects, maybe courier services, compliance, in terms of maybe registrations and all those kind of stuff. All these things fall under operational risk. Compliance risk, failure to meet applicable laws, standard, policies, contractual requirements, regulation requirements. All this falls under what? Compliance risk. Then reputation risk include complaints, adverse events, poor service experience, loss of trust. All those things fall under what? Reputational risk. So, as a good risk manager, you must be able to know what falls under your strategic risk, which I've explained, what falls under your clinical risk, operational risk, compliance risk, reputation risk. So, all these are what we call enterprise risk management in healthcare. So, these are the different categories of risk that can affect the organization, the enterprise, the business. So we're looking at business risk. Anytime you hear about enterprise risk management. So we look at strategic risk, clinical risk, operational risk, compliance risk, and what reputational what risk. Now, clinical risk focuses on risks that may affect your patient safety and clinical outcome. So anything, all the things that can affect your patient safety and the clinical outcome are, are considered under clinical risk. And some of these things, depending on your organization, depend on what you can do. Let's say, for example, now, if as a diagnosis center, you don't have quality controls, can it affect the clinical outcome? Yes, it will definitely. If, for example, now the environment at which your patient is being sample is being collected, the patient where the patient is being operated, all those things are not well, it can affect what the patient safety. So, example, could diagnostic error, medication related to event, delay in care, infection risk, and inadequate clinical communication. All these things are all clinical risk. Clinical risk management should involve competent clinical owners. So when you want to do this, the clinical owners of that process should also be involved. Evidence-based controls and routine monitoring are key to manage what clinical risk. High risk clinical issues require rapid escalation and documented learning. When you have a high risk of clinical issues, because for healthcare, we don't have the leverage of lives. We don't have the leverages of life. So if a life is damaged, a life is lost, you can't get it back. So those risks, anything has to do with patient safety, clinical outcome, they are high risk. So let's look at operational risk. Operational risk arises from failure in people, failure in processes, in equipment, facility, technology, supplies, or supporting system. Example, equipment downtime, reagent stock out, power interruption, inadequate staffing, data loss, or process bottlenecks. All these things fall under what? Operational risk. Operational risk can become a clinical risk when system failure affect patient care. Did you get that? So something can be an operational risk and yet can affect what can become a clinical risk. Why? Because of failure to put in what should be done. At the end of the day, now affect what? The patient outcome or clinical outcomes. And that's why you see operational functions, operational manager, they are not high lofty seats. There are people that it's a daunting task. You need sometimes when you work in a place as an operational manager where systems and structures are not there, you have a lot to do. because everything revolves around it. You need to fold your sleeves. You need to get dirty. You need to put your hands on the job. Now, control should be embedded in routine operations, not left as isolated quality activities. Oh, let's say, for example, until there's an audit or until there's an assessment. No, no, no. Control should always be part. What are we mean by control? Things that we put in place to mitigate what all these actions. Are we communicating? Please, if you can hear me loud and clear, please type on the comment section that I can hear you. Okay, thank you. So let's look at risk assessment, the practical approach. Use the organization approved risk scoring methodology. So you can, when you are doing risk assessment, so you should have what, a procedure, a policy for your risk management. You should have a process for your risk management. Now I've helped organizations, I've done trainings for different organizations, but there was one of the organizations I did training for in December last year or last 2 years. And after their audit and assessment, this were the only place that they were lacking. And so we have to do a risk assessment, a risk management training for the whole organization, cutting across all categories of staff and all departments. And they began to see that it's not a quality thing, not just a quality thing, it's a management thing. Because if for example, even in finance, we can use risk management, risk assessment. Oh, for example, now your revenue, you make a sales, and you make a sales, and at the end of the day, your books is reading are good in terms of revenue, but yet there is no cash flow. There's a risk. In other words, they are owing you. The aging analysis is going from 30 days to 60 days, from 60 days to 90 days, to 90 days to 120 days. There's a risk. So there's risk management. Well, there's risk because it may look good that there's money, but if you are not collecting your debt, or your debt is not being managed well, there's a risk to the business. So when you want to do every aspect, whatever aspect, whether clinical or not clinical, whether operation support functions and that, identify the risk event and its causes. Next, identify the potential consequences. Identify the risk event and it, because what is the risk and what is causing that risk. Then you need to do what, a root cause analysis. You can use the 5 why analysis. You can use any one that you are quite familiar with to do what, a proper root cause analysis. Identify the potential consequences. Let's say, for example, now, if there's water that if there's a pipe in the facility that is leaking water and water is on the floor, there's a risk. Somebody can get there and get person sleep. If the person sleeps and fall, there's a risk. Assess the likelihood and the impact using organization approved criteria. So the organization needs to establish that. One of the most common ones is what we use that's called risk metrics. So you can use your risk metrics. Determine the risk level and the priority. Is it high risk, low risk, or medium risk? And what's the priority? Identify the existing controls that have been put. If there is none, define the additional actions or additional control that is needed to be able to what? Tackle that risk, potential risk. Assign an owner to it. Set a new date and monitor the residual what risk. Now, this is a practical aspect to risk management. First, you need to listen that risk is a proactive step. It has not happened. If it's happened, we are no longer talking about risk management. We're talking about what? Occurrence management. or non-conformity event management. So what we used to know as CAPA, preventive action, is now what is majorly known as risk assessment. So so okay, for example, now we're having stock out, or potential stock out, or our suppliers are not giving us adequately as they need to get. There's a risk. So we are saying that you identify the risk of that thing, and it causes the root cause, identify the potential consequences because it has not happened. That's why we call it potential. If it happens, what are the consequences? Then I said the likelihood and the impact using organization what approved criteria, which can be your risk matrix, your approved risk matrix. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and etc. They determine the risk level and priority, identify the risk existing controls, define the additional action that is needed, and assign an owner to it. Because in every aspect of quality, ownership is key. Who is the owner of that process? Who is the owner of that what? Of that action that is being taken? Set a new date and monitor risk residual risk. Another aspect which you can handle is having a risk management committee in an organization that can also help to actualize risk management. So they help to go to identify potential risks. The risk register, their minimum fee. For a risk register, you can have this: the risk ID, the, the identification number of the risk. Then you can have it as a template. It can be a single template, can be a register, depending on how you want to achieve it. Now that's where it comes to quality document and record. So if I'm saying, okay, give me a risk register, you can make it in the form of like an Excel sheet, you can make it in the form of like a document, you can make any form matter, but your basic knowledge of QMS on quality document and record has to be implemented. The document has to be an approved document, must have a document number, revision date, and everything, control number, and etc. Those are things that are taught in basic quality management system. So the risk register. So you create a risk register. So things that should be in the risk register should be like risk ID, like the number, let's say, and whatever you want to number it. Then the risk statement, just like we used to have a non-conformity event management, that thing that is identified. Now, here is the risk statement. Oh, as at the time of assessment, or time of risk, so discover that the water is being poured on the floor, uh which could lead. Those are risk statements. The process or the department that risk is being identified, you put it. Then what is the cost and what the hazard, you put it there. You put a space for that. Potential consequences, existing controls, the risk rating, high, low, medium, priority, high or low. Additional mitigation actions. Mitigation action is what to put in place to be able to work, curb that risk. The risk owner, the due date, the status, and the review date. All these things should be contained in your risk register. Does that make sense? Please type on the comment section if you understand what is being done. Okay,
Well,
thank you.
well, you are mentioning the this phone and you are talking about
Just
the
hold on,
risk
just hold on,
responsibility.
just pin your questions. I will take questions. Please, if you have a question, just write down your questions, and after the session, I'm going to take your questions. Okay. So now let's look at incident reporting. Create a reporting culture that encourages learning than just consignment. Capture what happens, where, when, and immediate response. So that these are part of what corrective actions. So there's what called immediate response. Let's say, for example, now, for incident, somebody is sitting at the reception and there's a bad chair, and the person, the chair got damaged, broke down, the person fell down. So what there is, you can't say, oh, as a quality oriented person, you are going to document first. There must be an immediate response. Somebody comes in and complain about, oh, maybe a test was not done. There should be an immediate response before the documentation. So all those things you capture it in your incident report. Capture what happened, where, when, and the immediate response. Remember that the immediate response is not the corrective action. Corrective action is a process that is put in place after a root cause analysis has been done. Then you now put a corrective action. If the root cause analysis is not properly done, corrective action cannot be effective. So prioritize significant events for appropriate investigation and escalation. Separate immediate containment from long-term corrective actions, like immediate actions or what long-term corrective action. But that's why in a corrective action template, you should have what your immediate action and your corrective action. The immediate action talks about what you do at that point in time to put the incident under control. Corrective actions help you to put systems in place that will help will prevent what reoccurrence. Look for system contributors, not individual mistakes. Then feed lesson back into policies, training, processes, and risk registers when you are doing incident report. So all those incidents should feed those lessons into the policies, into training. There are some things that will need people to be retrained, processes, and risk registers. So corrective actions is incomplete until effectiveness is verified. These are a lot of things people don't know. Doing basic quality management, you're like, oh, do a corrective action. Yeah, but we also inform them that those corrective actions has to be monitored. So at advanced quality management system now, we are looking at closing the loop. Corrective action is incomplete until there's effectiveness is verified. So reduce immediate exposure and protect patients and staff. Investigate, understand what happened and why. Correct, address the identified cases or the contributing factor. Then prevent reoccurrence, strengthen the process or the control. So that's why in leadership and governance in QMS, it goes beyond just the actions. So what we are looking at now, we are looking at systems. We are looking at effectiveness. We are looking at long-term control. And we're looking at closing up the gaps. Okay, I remember one of the facility I worked sometime as the manager. So a client called me and he took me to the gate and asked me to, this is over close to over 10 years ago, and asked me to look. Now what can I see? I looked at everywhere. The more I look, the less I see. All I was looking was seeing people going and coming in, and cars parked everywhere. So what can you see? What is going on? Can you see? Yeah, I didn't see anything wrong until the patient gave me a feedback that, can't you see that this place is too small for your business? Like, this place is not actually containing. And that was the first time I looked at it. I said, oh, it's actually true. Do you know that observation gave birth to we seeking a bigger facility, a bigger car place for patient satisfaction? But there are some people that may not want to even come because it will take, in fact, after attending to them, it will take them 15 to 20 minutes for them to come out or to even get space to park. All these things are so at that point in time, so that corrective action to that issues or to that thing is a long-term thing. So, but you see that you need to understand that when a corrective action is put, remember, for a corrective action to be in existence, that means an occurrence or a gap has been identified. So we say when that happens, you do what? A root cause analysis. You can use the 5 why analysis. Now, example of the 5 why. 5 why analysis is simply asking 5 whys to a particular occurrence to get to the real root cause. Okay, let's say for example that a patient comes in and was coming in for a particular test, and the test was not done. So the first question is, why was the test not done? That's one why. So, and maybe the answer can be, we ran out of reagent. Okay, or the scientist or the person who is working at it did not do the test. That's the first why answer. So second, well, why did the scientist not run the test? Maybe the answer could be, we were stuck out. Now the question, why were we stuck out? Now the procurement will say, or the people who do supply chain procurement will say, okay, we were stuck out because the vendor refused to supply reagent. Now the next one, why did the vendor refuse to supply the reagent? Because we have not paid the vendor. Now, why did we not pay the vendor? Oh, maybe the finance can answer at that point in time there was no cash flow. There was no money. Why were there no money? Because we are the people who we service have not paid us. We were owing the debt. So you see that now we have asked 5 whys now. You see, so the reason why the test was not done is not because the scientists did not do the test. Why? Because what? Cash flow or debt recovery. So that means if that debt recovery is sorted, then every other thing would have been in line. They would have had money enough to pay the vendor. The vendor would have supplied us, and since they supplied us, the scientists would have picked the reagent and run the test. So if you are putting a corrective action now on the first why, that corrective action would not be effective. Okay, that's okay. Now the scientist is not wrong. Let's retrain the scientist. Let's ask why. That's not the root cause. So the root cause is the deep underlying layer, contributing factor, the main thing why that resulted to that. So when you trace down using this, you can use that 5 whys, you have identified the root cause. So by the time you are now putting a corrective action, it will be effective. So at this point in time, we are looking at closing the loop, retain evidence, and obtain relevant risk and process work documentation. Let's see another case study. This diagnostic service incident now. A critical lab result is delayed because of equipment downtime and ineffective escalation process. The incident is reported after the patient care team raised a concern. Discussion. What are the immediate control? These I've answered it yesterday. What are the operational risks that are exposed? Remember, we talked about different risks. What clinical risks could result? So propose 3 preventive controls and define how effectiveness will be monitored. So this is another scenario for these 2 courses. A critical lab result is delayed because of equipment downtime and ineffective escalation process. The incident is reported after the patient care team raises a concern. Remember, after discussion, what are the immediate controls? What are the immediate corrective actions? What operational risks are exposed? What clinical risks could result? Then propose 3, the exercise now, propose 3 preventive controls and define how effectiveness will be monitored. Please take this. I also send it to us. Part of these are the 2 case study we are going to handle, because advanced QMS management system is all about implementation. implementation of policies, programs that could help. We are not asking now what are the do's and don'ts of quality. We're looking at you be able to build framework, be able to build structures, be able to build an understanding, and be able to build a system if that can make QMS to become effective. So, risk management governance, frontline teams identify and manage process risk. Managers owns the risk within their operational areas. So, if I'm a manager of a courier service supporting a hospital, I should own the risk in that operational area. Quality and risk function coordinate methodology, reporting, and assurance. All these things forms under what the governance. Quality committee can review significant risk, incident, and what corrective action. If you don't have a quality committee, you can have a risk committee. The executive leadership prioritize resources now and accept and escalate significant residual risk. So it is not the duty of the executive leadership to prioritize resources to place of what high risk. Because most of the time, there's always competing things like okay, limited resources but competing activities. So as an executive leader, where will you ask for approval? So that's why we see finance people that handle operation must understand risk management. So that at the end of the day, if you have 15 naira or you have 50 million naira, there's a problem of 200 million. Where will you put that 50 million? You don't put that 50 million based on who is shouting the most. You don't put that 50 million based on who say we need this, we need this, we need this. Fine. That is what every manager will do. Or you put it where you feel that should be. All these people have been asking long time ago. You put it based on what that's what we call resource. So in one of our courses, we have what we call resource management. How to manage resources in an organization. So priority should be given to what? Things with what? Significant residual risk. Let's say, for example, now, I could remember there was a place that I once worked, and we had a very bad light issues. So most time when there is that bad light comes in, and it can go on through the system, and then it can, the light issue can disturb and spoil all the equipment. At that point in time, that's a very high risk. If you prioritize buying new equipment over solving that issue, see that you can use money to buy new equipment, and that when there is that light issue, it can spoil that new equipment. So if I have a resources as a manager, as an executive leader, then I should be able to solve that problem because it has a high risk. Board provides oversight of major organization risk exposure. Okay, our workshop choose one high risk process from your organization, write the risk statement clearly, identify the causes and the consequences, list existing control. So what we are trying to do here, assess the priority, assess and prioritize the risk using your risk matrix or approved matrix. Then propose a mitigation action, owners and deadline. Then enter the result into a risk register template. So what you need to do, you create a risk template from this slide this slide. Okay. Yes, look at it here. From this slide, risk ID, risk statement. Then you just put in this. So you choose one risk process from your organization, just one process that, and then look for a risk. You identify the risk, write the risk statement, identify the cost and the consequences. Then list the existing controls. Then assess and prioritize the risk using what You approve risk metrics, then propose the mitigation action, owners, and the deadline. Then enter it into that your risk register that you have created. And that. So a final integration, we're now integrating governance and risk together now, module 2 and 3. Governance determine who is accountable for risk. Risk management identifies, governance identifies who is accountable for risk. Risk management identifies and prioritizes what could affect the objective and patient care. Incident reporting generates evidence and organization learning. Corrective action strengthens controls and prevent reoccurrence. Quality committee connect information to decisions, resources, and escalation. Outcome: a proactive quality culture with visible what? Accountability. So when there's an integration between your quality governance and your risk, these are the things. This is what we call like one management circle, and the benefit of these two modules. Governance determines who is accountable for risk. Risk management identifies and prioritizes what could affect objective and patient care. Incident reporting generates evidence and organization learning. The corrective action strengthens controls and preventive recurrence. The quality committee connects information to decision, resources, and escalation. Then the outcomes are usually a proactive quality culture and a visible what? Accountability. So, reflection and action plan. What is the biggest governance gap in your organization? Which high risk processes requires immediate action? Who should own the risk? What control can be strengthened within 30 days? For this sense, you need to think it and work them out. What evidence will demonstrate improvement to you? Commitment. So just identify one governance action and one risk management action to implement after this section. That's why I call it an advanced quality management. So you have to identify, look for it within your organization, where you have worked before, where you are working, and if I one governance action and one risk management action to implement afterwards this session. So quality excellence requires leadership, accountability, and risk intelligence. From Pegisol Academy, Pegisol Consultancy, this is advanced quality management system course. This is module 2 and module 3. Thank you. I'll take your question in a moment.